Guys, we've got the brand new Losi Not a Grom NASCAR on the bench, and today we're going to find out just how much grom this is and just how much grom it isn't. First of all, I want to say this car is absolutely gorgeous. They did a fantastic job on it. It looks low and mean. The suspension feels good. Everything seems tightly integrated on it, and I cannot wait to dig into it. First thing you'll notice here is that it uses body clips. I wasn't a huge fan of this when I first found out about it, as the full-size cars no longer use body clips, and it would have been nice to have seen a clipless body system on here, but I do get why they did it. The body itself is fairly nicely detailed. It is mainly just a Lexan body. We do have a hard plastic rear wing back here, but other than that, it's a very standard looking body. It is medium thickness, and I think for the kind of bashing that you'd expect to do with one of these, it'll probably be fine. But if you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that underneath the body is where things are going to get really interesting. We've got a foam front bumper that is all Losi, as well as a front splitter, which is all Losi, though the mounting to the chassis does appear to be the same as on the Groms. We've got these body mounts that stick way out to the front, though it looks like you might be able to switch those around to the back, so maybe we can do something with that in the future. We'll just have to wait and see about that. Around back, we've got another body mount sticking off the rear shock tower, and then a nice plastic spider structure holding on this rear diffuser. That rear diffuser also appears to be connected just like you'd expect a Grom to be. And then we have this super long chassis, which is longer than any other Grom vehicle. I'm hoping we're going to be able to take advantage of that in a future video. I'm definitely curious to see if Losi upgraded any of the drivetrain components on this. Right off the bat, it looks like they have the same wheel nuts. These are obviously unique wheels and tires. These are Goodyear Eagles, and they feel pretty sticky. I'm interested to see how these things actually handle some regular street bashing. These are on some unique wheels, and if you'll notice here, these hexes are a lot smaller than normal. It looks like these hexes are about 8.5 millimeter, which I don't think is any sort of standard, and that's going to be a little bit annoying for upgrades, though I suspect the standard 12 millimeter hexes off of the Groms will swap on here. We'll be finding that out in the future. Now, interestingly, these upper arms have a Losi part number, but the lower arms have an Arma part number, and these appear to be the exact same lower arms that you get on the Mojave Grom. The knuckles also appear to be Mojave Grom knuckles. I'm definitely curious to see what's different about these arms. We'll compare them in just a little bit. We're also going to dig into this drivetrain, because I'm curious to see how much of this stuff has to come off to get at the differentials. Finishing up the front suspension, we do have unique shocks, so they do appear to be the same style as the Grom. Though they don't look exactly the same, let's get a closer look at one of these. Okay, definitely using the same mounting hardware. And whereas these do look very similar, they're obviously shorter, but unlike on the Arma Groms, these are actually threaded. And removing the shock cap, we can see this is an emulsion style shock. I believe the Groms are bladder style, and it has a very basic looking piston in there. And as you would expect on an on-road car, these are nice stiff springs. Moving on to the electronics, we've got the same 2-in-1 receiver ESC. This does have a standard plug for servo, so you can use whatever servo you want. And if you replace this, you can use it with the same servo that came with it. This ESC is not mounted on top of the servo like it is on most of the Groms, simply because there's more room in the chassis, so it doesn't need to be. I suspect this servo is going to be exactly the same as the other Groms, though we'll take a closer look at that in just a minute. And then we have the same 1400 milliamp hour 2S Spectrum Smart battery. And even though there's a bunch of extra room over here, the battery compartment itself remains pretty small. If you want to run a much larger battery than this, you're going to have to do some modification here. Now, before we take a look at the power system, I know there's a few unique features here as well. Let's go ahead and pull this front end apart, see how hard it's going to be to get into, and see why these arms are a different part number. All right, that should let this come off. Yep, and the front bumper and splitter comes off pretty easily. You get a better look at that. And now this thing's starting to look a little bit more like a Grom. If you're interested in seeing me turn this thing into not a Losi NASCAR, make sure you get subscribed, because we're going to be doing some pretty interesting stuff with this platform. Okay, so now you can see we have the exact same plastic stub axle steel CVD setup as on all of the Groms. The only real difference is this smaller hex. All right, front cover should come off, and then the differential comes out, so that really isn't any harder than any other Grom. As you can see very clearly here, we have the plastic output cups, so this is not the all-metal differential, but I do want to make sure that we have the updated internals in this differential. Just like with the Groms, if you're going to be doing any serious work with this, you definitely want a good 1.5 millimeter bit. Having a cheap 1.5 millimeter bit basically guarantees that you're going to strip out screws. So the obvious external update is that they made these cups a little bit thicker to increase their general strength, which did definitely help. As you can see, we've got a sealed bearing here. I expect to see that throughout the entire car. Opening this up, we're hoping to see some metal gears in here. And yes, we do have the metal spider gears, though still the plastic side gears. So this is the updated differential, and whereas it's not all metal, it's definitely a lot stronger than the original one was. And of course, just like with full-sized car brand sharing, there's going to be some Arma logos hiding here and there on this Losi. And just so you know, the grease they use has a high sulfur content, so it smells like rotten eggs. Don't get it on anything. All right, let's see what's going on with these upper arms. Okay, it looks completely normal. Let me go get a Mojave arm and see what's going on here. If you haven't seen my video about this, make sure you check it out. It was a pretty fun build. And if you're wondering how I made this basher bumper, I cut it out of Delrin on the Algo Laser Alpha Mark II. Pretty cool laser cutter. Looks like I might have missed some screws on this one. All right, on the right we have the Mojave Grom, on the left we have the Losi, and I don't know, guys. These parts look exactly the same to me. I really don't know why the Losi has its own part number. Both the balls are steel? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments if you see something I'm missing. All right, well, with that mystery annoyingly unsolved, let me get this front end put back together, and then we'll take a closer look at this powertrain where I know there are some unique Losi parts. One thing that started with the Mojave Grom and continues with the Losi is the use of these longer screws that hold the diff cover on. I suspect this was done to increase strength. I did notice that these body mounts have quite a bit of adjustment to them. That should come in handy in the future. Everything in the rear should come apart very similarly to the front, though I did notice they give you two little holes here in the diffuser, which would let you get in and get those two lower screws on the differential cover. But honestly, it's probably just better to take these two screws out of the top and get the diffuser out of the way. Now, speaking of screws, let's get all the screws out of this center cover. This center cover is a unique Losi part number simply because of how long it is, but other than the length, it's basically identical to the Arma Grom parts. This center drive shaft is also a unique part number, again because of its length, and again it is very similar to the Arma part number. Losi does have some optional part numbers listed. One of them is for this center drive shaft. They've also got some for some suspension components, though I haven't been able to figure out what they are yet. This motor is identical. However, as opposed to just having the single pinion hole in the motor mount, this has 3 hole choices, which is really nice, even though the full kit of mounts really doesn't cost that much. And we've got a 19-tooth mod 0.5 pinion on here. The spur gear is identical, it's sintered steel, and there is no slipper clutch on it. Pushing the motor with the mount down, it does appear they've done a pretty good job with mesh, though it feels a little loose for my tastes. And then up here, the steering assembly appears to be all Grom. This servo has the same part number, but we haven't taken a look at one of these recently, so let's make sure they haven't updated it. Now make sure you stay tuned. Once we get done testing this thing stock, we're going to be doing an upgrade to it. Then later on, things are going to get pretty wild. So this thing is supposed to be waterproof. Pulling these screws off though, I don't see any O-ring in here. But this servo is probably small enough that you don't need them. Removing the bottom cover reveals a pretty tidy little package in here, again, with no sealing, though the board does appear to be conformally coated. And then looking at the top, we can see we've got brass gears in here, so this does appear to be the same servo we've seen in the past. Okay guys, I think that pretty much covers everything. Let me get the rest of this put back together. Let's go see what this thing can do, and then when we come back, we're gonna go brushless. All right guys, let's see how fast this thing is stock. It feels reasonably stable, not exactly fast though. Give her another pass. And one more. All right, let's see how fast that is. Okay, 19 miles an hour. Well, that's fairly slow. I think we can definitely do better with a brushless system. Let's see how it bashes. So far, guys, this platform is really fun. I'm actually surprised at how well it handled the dirt, and the thing actually gets more fun in the dirt because it slides around more easily. That being said, we definitely don't have enough power, and this motor is already starting to smell hot. I've actually got a super secret way to get more power out of this. Let me show you. So all we need to do is take this center brace out, pull the motor out of here, unplug this, and then seriously though, this thing's begging for brushless power, and we're gonna do it the cheapest way possible, starting off with this Keenso 3800 kV motor. You can get this on Amazon, and it has the same shaft size as the stock motor, so you can use the stock pinion. And we're gonna couple that with a Hobbywing Quick Run 10BL60. There are two different versions of this. This is the much smaller one, and fits great in this platform. This is also just about the least expensive way to get brushless in this car without resorting to something that might end up blowing up on you. We also need to get this ESC out of here. It's just double side taped in. This motor already does not sound very happy. Probably just got some dirt in it, but it's pretty crunchy. We're gonna be using the stock 19-tooth pinion to save money, and we can use the stock motor mount. Be careful with these stock screws. They're actually pretty brittle, and I've broken a couple of them doing these upgrades in the past on other Groms. As long as you're gentle with them, they're fine, but they do seem a little more fragile than I would expect. Now, if budget brushless isn't your thing, make sure you get subscribed because we got a pretty wild setup going into this car in the future. So installing this brushless system isn't terribly difficult, and it's not all that expensive, but this is a fairly expensive car, and I'm curious to know whether or not you think it should come out of the box brushless. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And of course, you're gonna have to install your choice of receiver. The nice thing about this car is there is plenty of room to put all this stuff. Some of the other Grom platform cars don't really have a lot of room under the hood. And then finally, we're gonna need a 3S battery. This new SMC high voltage battery should work great, but we are gonna run it at standard voltages because I don't know if this ESC can handle 3S high voltage or not. I'm gonna get this pack charged up, and let's go see what she can really do. All right, 3S brushless, let's see how she does. Oh, that's a lot more power. Full power. Woo-hoo-hoo, that feels good. Oh, she's spicy now. One more pass. All right, let's see how that did. Woo-hoo-hoo, 40 miles an hour. That is twice as fast as it was before. Let's see if it can handle it bashing. Okay guys, I have to say I'm super impressed with this little car. I didn't really have high hopes for this thing being fun, but it's an absolute blast, not only on-road, but with light off-roading as well. I think this really smooth underside, as well as these seemingly incredibly versatile tires, really helped this car to be a lot of fun. This budget brushless system is a blast, and this motor didn't even get hot, so you could probably gear it up and go even faster, though 40 miles an hour is plenty fast enough for this, and with this power system, it's got plenty of power. That being said, I still want to put more power in it, and I've got some other really interesting things I want to do with this platform, so if you're interested in that, make sure you get subscribed, and then check out one of these videos.